So from the previous slide, you saw the word consecutive. So the first question you might want to ask yourself is, what is consecutive? Well, consecutive means to go in order. So right now, I want you to think of 3 consecutive numbers. Any example? So once you thought of the 3 consecutive numbers, for example, 2, 3, and 4, you want to notice a pattern. So from 2, 3, and 4, I can tell myself if x is my first number, which is 2, how do I go from 2 to 3? Well, we know from 2 to 3, we add 1. So if x is my first integer, first consecutive number, then to get my second number, which is 3, all we had to do was add 1 to get 3. So we know x plus 1 equals my second consecutive number. So if I want to get my third consecutive number, which is 4, how do I go from 2 to 4? Now, if you said add 1, you're incorrect because 2 plus 1 is 3, so we're still at 3. But to go from 2 to 4, we add 2, and since x represents my first number, which is 2, we know x plus 2 will represent my third consecutive number. So using this idea, we're going to solve this problem. The product of 2 positive consecutive integers is 56. Find the integers. So I would like you to press pause and try this problem on a scratch piece of paper and then resume the video once you're done. So welcome back. I hope you solved the problem and you're just not waiting for the answer. So in this problem, we're given that there's 2 positive consecutive integers. So that means if 1 was my first number and 2 was my second number, we know the first number will be represented by x. And we know x plus 1 is my second consecutive number because to get from 1 to 2, we add 1. So we know the first product will be x. And I'll write this again. X is the first consecutive number. And x plus 1 will represent my second consecutive number. And because that word said product, we know that when we multiply these two values, we want it to equal 56. So x times x plus 1 equals 56. Distribute the x, we get x squared plus x equals 56. Then we're going to subtract 56 from each side. And you'll get x squared plus x minus 56 equals 0. When you do the x method, you'll do a times c, which is negative 56. And our b value is 1, so we know it's 8 times negative 7. So we'll get x plus 8, x minus 7, and then we'll get the numbers as x equals negative 8 and x equals 7. Now if you plug it in, if we plug in negative 8, we get negative 8. And if we plug in to the second one, it's negative 8 plus 1. We get since we get the values are negative 8 and 7, if we reread the word problem, you want the positive values, which is not negative 8, because negative 8 is not positive, so we're going to use 7. And 7 is x, so 7 represents the first consecutive number. And 8, and since 7 plus 1 is second consecutive number, we know the second number is 8. So the two numbers are 7 and 8. And this is how we get the two numbers, besides guessing and checking. So we talked about consecutive integers. What about consecutive even integers? Is it the same format? That's what we're going to look at now. So think about 3 consecutive even numbers. So an example of three consecutive even numbers are 2, 4, and 6. What pattern do you notice? Well, if x represents my first consecutive number, which is 2, how do I get from 2 to 4? If you said add 1, then you're not thinking about it. Because to get to 2 to 4, we have to add 2. So our second number is represented by x plus 2, which is my second consecutive number. Then, how do I get my third consecutive number? Well, in this scenario, to go from 2 to 6, how much do I add by? And if you said 4, you are correct, because from 2 to 6, we have to add 4. So we start with x. X plus 4 gives us our third consecutive number. So x plus 4 is third consecutive number. So this is how we come up with the rules for even integers. So in our practice problem that you answered in our prior slide, the question asked you, the product of two positive consecutive even integers is 80. Find the integers. So since we are working with two even numbers, we know that x will represent our first consecutive even integer. We want to clarify it's even. And x plus 2 will represent our second consecutive even integer. Using this, we know we want to multiply these two values and have it equal to 80. So x times x plus 2 will equal 80. Distribute x squared plus 2x equals 80. Subtract 80. And if we do our x method, we know something times something is negative 80. If you combine, it's 2. So we'll get 10 and negative 8. So x plus 10, x minus 8 equals 0. Using the 0 property, we will solve for x. So x plus 10 equals 0. X minus 8 equals 0. X equals negative 10. X equals 8. And since we want positive values again, x equals negative 10 will not be one of our values we can work with. So it'll be x equals 8. And we're going to plug it in. So since x is equal to 8, this will be our first consecutive even integer. And x plus 2 means 8 plus 2 is our second consecutive, which is 10. So we know our two values, 8 and 10. Challenge problem. At this moment, I want you to take on this challenge, press pause, and solve this problem. And once you solved it, come back to this video to watch if your work parallels with this solution that I have for you. So for this problem, we're working with three positive consecutive integers, meaning x will be our first consecutive integer. X plus 1 will represent our second consecutive integer. And x plus 2 will represent our third consecutive integer. And we notice that the product of the second integer, which is this one, and the third integer is 72. So we're only going to work with those two expressions. X plus 1 times x plus 2 equals 72. I hope you solved the problem out. So if you didn't yet, pause right here and try solving a different problem from here so that you can assess your understanding. Okay, so FOIL, x squared plus 2x plus x plus 2 equals 72. X squared plus 3x plus 2 equals 72. Subtract 72 equals 0. So we're going to figure out what times what is negative 70. But if you combine it, it's 3. And if you said 10 and negative 7, you are correct. X plus 10, x minus 7 equals 0. Have each part equal to 0. You get x equals negative 10, x equals 7. Notice that we want positive, so negative 10 will not work. So x will equal 7. So what you're going to do is plug it in. X equals 7. That's my first consecutive. 7 plus 1. My second consecutive, which is 8. And then 7, 8, 9 would be our third consecutive. So our answers are 7, 8, and 9.